What happens when a member of the royal family thinks they can walk into American television and demand special treatment? It only took 42 seconds of pure entitlement for Prince Harry to completely destroy his reputation on live television and get himself thrown off one of America's most beloved morning shows. The morning started like any other at the Good Morning America studios in New York City. Lara Spencer had arrived early, as she always did, reviewing her notes and preparing for what was supposed to be a straightforward interview about Prince Harry's latest charitable endeavor. The producers had briefed her on the talking points, and everything seemed routine. Harry was promoting a new mental health initiative, and the network expected a pleasant, informative conversation that would give viewers insight into his post-royal life. But from the moment Prince Harry walked onto the set, something felt different. Gone was the charming, self-deprecating prince that audiences had grown to love. Instead, there was an air of superiority, a coldness that made the crew uncomfortable. He barely acknowledged the makeup artists, brushed past the stage managers, and took his seat across from Lara without so much as a smile. Lara, ever the professional, greeted him warmly. "Good morning, Prince Harry. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're excited to hear about your new mental health initiative." Harry's response was immediate and sharp. "Actually, I'd prefer if you address me properly. It's His Royal Highness." The studio fell silent. Lara blinked, taken aback by the demand. In all her years of hosting, she had interviewed presidents, celebrities, and dignitaries from around the world, and none had ever made such a request on American television. She maintained her composure, her professional smile never wavering. "Of course," she said diplomatically. "We're honored to have you here. Can you tell our viewers about this new project you're working on?" But Harry wasn't satisfied. He leaned forward in his chair, his voice taking on a condescending tone. "Before we begin, I need to make something clear. I've reviewed your previous interviews, and frankly, your questions are quite pedestrian. I'm here to discuss serious matters, not engage in tabloid-level gossip." Lara's eyebrows raised slightly, but she kept her professional demeanor intact. The veteran host had dealt with difficult guests before, but this level of arrogance was unprecedented. "We absolutely want to focus on your important work," she replied smoothly. "Mental health is something our viewers care deeply about." "Do they?" Harry interrupted, his voice dripping with skepticism. "Because from what I've seen of American television, it's all sensationalism and shallow entertainment. I'm not sure your audience has the sophistication to understand the complexities of the issues I'm addressing." The camera operators exchanged glances. This wasn't going according to plan. Lara could feel the tension in the studio, but she pressed on, determined to salvage the interview. "Our viewers are incredibly engaged and thoughtful," she said firmly. "They're interested in learning about initiatives that can make a real difference." Harry laughed, a sound devoid of any warmth. "Are they, though? Or are they just looking for their next celebrity fix? Let's be honest about what this really is." That's when Lara Spencer showed exactly why she'd earned her place as one of America's most respected television hosts. Instead of backing down or becoming defensive, she leaned forward slightly, her voice calm but firm. "What this is an opportunity for you to share something meaningful with millions of Americans who tune in every morning because they trust us to bring them substantive content. If you'd like to be part of that conversation, we're here for it." The challenge was subtle but unmistakable. Harry's face flushed, clearly not expecting pushback from what he apparently considered a mere morning show host. "Trust?" he scoffed. "Your network profits from invading people's privacy, from turning personal struggles into entertainment. Don't lecture me about trust." Lara's patience was wearing thin, but her professionalism never cracked. "We're here to give you a platform to discuss your work," she said evenly. "That's what we do. We provide information and inspire our viewers." "Inspire?" Harry's voice rose slightly. "By reducing complex social issues to sound bites? By asking predictable questions that any first-year journalism student could come up with? This is exactly the kind of shallow coverage that perpetuates the problems I'm trying to solve." The production team behind the cameras was growing increasingly uncomfortable. This wasn't an interview anymore. It was becoming a confrontation. Lara glanced briefly at the cameras, aware that millions of viewers were witnessing this unprecedented display of arrogance. "Perhaps we should focus on the substance then," Lara suggested, her voice steady despite the mounting tension. "Tell us about the specific programs you're implementing and how they're making a difference." But Harry was beyond reason now. "The specific programs?" he repeated mockingly. "Do you even understand the psychological frameworks we're working within? The intersectional approaches to trauma-informed care? Or would you prefer I dumb it down for your audience? That was the moment everything changed. Lara Spencer had built her career on treating every guest with respect, regardless of their background or status. She had interviewed grieving families, celebrated heroes, and controversial figures, always maintaining her dignity and theirs. But this attack on her audience, on the millions of Americans who trusted her every morning, crossed a line. "You know what?" Lara said, her voice taking on a steel edge that regular viewers had rarely heard. "Our audience includes teachers, healthcare workers, parents juggling multiple jobs, students, retirees, and people from every walk of life. They're some of the smartest, most caring people I know, and they deserve better than being talked down to by someone who apparently thinks his title makes him superior to hardworking Americans." Harry's eyes widened, clearly shocked that this American television host dared to challenge him so directly. "Excuse me?" he sputtered. "Do you know who you're talking to?" "I'm talking to someone who came on our show as a guest and is now insulting our viewers," Lara replied firmly. "Title or no title, that's not acceptable here." The studio air crackled with tension as Harry's face contorted with disbelief. Here was someone who had spent his entire life being deferred to, suddenly facing a reality check from an American television host who refused to bow to his demand. "Not acceptable?" Harry's voice climbed higher, his composure completely shattered. "I am a prince of the British royal family. I've dedicated my life to service while you've built your career on morning television fluff. How dare you suggest that I'm the one being inappropriate?" Lara's jaw tightened. She could see the producers frantically gesturing from behind the cameras, unsure whether to cut to commercial or let this train wreck continue. But she wasn't about to back down now. "And I've built my career treating people with respect," she shot back. "Something you might want to try." "Respect?" Harry laughed bitterly. "You want to talk about respect? Your entire industry thrives on tearing people down, on exploiting personal tragedy for ratings. I've seen what American media did to my mother, what they continue to do to my family. And now you have the audacity to lecture me about respect?" The mention of his mother sent a ripple through the studio. Everyone knew this was dangerous territory, but Lara wasn't intimidated. "Your mother was beloved by millions of Americans," she said firmly. "And those same Americans you're insulting right now mourned her loss genuinely. They didn't deserve to be attacked because of the actions of tabloid journalists." "Oh, spare me the sanctimonious speech," Harry snapped. "You're all the same. Vultures circling around people's pain, pretending to care while you count your advertising dollars? At least the British tabloids are honest about being parasites." That comment hit the studio like a lightning bolt. The crew members, many of whom had worked in journalism for decades, covering real news and human interest stories, looked stunned. This wasn't just an attack on Lara anymore. It was an assault on their entire profession. Lara's voice dropped to a dangerously calm level. "You know what, Your Royal Highness? I think we need to take a step back here. This interview was supposed to be about your charitable work, but instead you've chosen to attack our viewers, our network, and the entire American media industry. Is that really the message you want to send?" "The message I want to send," Harry said, leaning back in his chair with a smug expression, "is that I won't be subjected to amateur-hour journalism from someone who peaked at entertainment reporting. Do you even have a journalism degree? Or did you just smile your way into this chair?" The gasps from the crew were audible now. Several female staff members looked visibly angry at the blatantly sexist comment. Lara's eyes flashed, but her voice remained controlled. "I have 15 years of experience in broadcast journalism, including covering major news events, interviewing world leaders, and yes, bringing important stories to millions of Americans every single morning. But apparently, that's not good enough for someone who's never worked a real job in his life." Harry's face turned red. "Never worked a real job? I served in the military while you were asking celebrities about their favorite breakfast cereals. I've traveled the world highlighting important causes while you've been stuck in a television studio reading from teleprompters. And yet here you are," Lara replied coolly, "in that same television studio, begging for airtime to promote your projects. If we're so beneath you, why are you here?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Harry opened his mouth, then closed it, clearly caught off guard by the simple logic of her response. The silence stretched for several uncomfortable seconds before he recovered. "I'm here because I was told this would be a serious interview about important issues," he said, his voice tight with anger. "Instead, I'm being questioned by someone who clearly doesn't understand the gravity of mental health advocacy or the complexities of the work we're doing." Lara had heard enough. "Then enlighten me," she said, her voice sharp. "Instead of spending the last 10 minutes insulting everyone in this building, why don't you actually tell us about this work you're so passionate about? Give our apparently unsophisticated audience some of that wisdom you're hoarding." "Fine," Harry said, straightening in his chair. "But I'm not going to pretend this is anything more than damage control for your ratings. The initiative focuses on trauma-informed therapeutic interventions for underserved communities, incorporating both Western psychological frameworks and indigenous healing practices." "That sounds important," Lara said, genuinely trying to steer the conversation back on track. "Can you give us some specific examples of how this is being implemented?" But Harry wasn't finished with his condescending lecture. "I suppose I can try to break it down for your audience," he said with a patronizing smile. "Though I'm not sure how much they'll retain given the average attention span of American television viewers." That was it. Lara Spencer had reached her breaking point. This man had insulted her, her colleagues, her profession, and most importantly, the millions of Americans who trusted her every morning. She leaned forward, her voice deadly calm. "You know what? I think we're done here." Harry blinked, confusion replacing his smugness. "Excuse me?" "You heard me," Lara said, standing up and removing her microphone. "This interview is over. You came on our show, insulted our viewers, attacked our staff, and somehow managed to turn what should have been a positive conversation about mental health into a masterclass in arrogance. We don't need that kind of toxicity here." Harry's mouth fell open. "You can't just end the interview. Do you have any idea who I am?" "Yeah," Lara replied, her voice carrying years of authority and experience. "You're someone who just lost the privilege of being on our show." The silence in the studio was deafening. Harry sat frozen in his chair, his face cycling through shock, disbelief, and growing rage. In his entire life, no one had ever dismissed him so completely, so publicly. The cameras were still rolling, capturing every second of his humiliation for millions of viewers. "You cannot dismiss me," Harry said, his voice rising to a near shout. "I am a member of the British royal family. You work for a television network. You don't get to decide when this conversation ends." Lara turned back to face him, her expression a mixture of pity and disgust. "Actually, I do. This is our show, our studio, and our audience. You've been insulting for the past 15 minutes, and now you're done." Harry shot to his feet, his composure completely gone. "This is outrageous. Do you have any idea what kind of international incident you're creating? The British government will hear about this. Your superiors will hear about this." "Good," Lara replied calmly, crossing her arms. "Maybe they'll learn something about how not to treat people." The production team was scrambling now. The director was speaking rapidly into his headset, trying to decide whether to cut to commercial or let this unprecedented meltdown continue. Several security personnel had moved closer to the set, sensing the situation was spiraling out of control. Harry pointed an accusatory finger at Lara. "You think you can just humiliate me on live television? You think there won't be consequences for this kind of disrespect?" "The only person who humiliated you," Lara said evenly, "was you. Every word that came out of your mouth showed our viewers exactly who you really are. A spoiled, entitled man who thinks his birth gives him the right to look down on hardworking Americans." "How dare you?" Harry's voice cracked with fury. "I have dedicated my life to service. I have sacrificed everything for charitable causes, and this is how I'm treated by some second-rate morning show host who wouldn't last 5 minutes in the real world." Lara's eyes blazed. "The real world? You mean the world where people have to earn their respect instead of demanding it because of their last name? Where people work 40-hour weeks at jobs that actually matter? Where mothers get up at 5 in the morning to get their kids ready for school before coming home to watch our show because it brings them a few minutes of joy in their busy lives?" "Those people," Harry spat, "live meaningless little lives focused on meaningless little problems. They have no concept of the global issues I deal with every day." The collective gasp from the crew was audible. Even the cameramen, trained to remain neutral, shook their heads in disbelief. Harry had just insulted not only the viewing audience, but the fundamental dignity of working people everywhere. Lara's voice dropped to a whisper that somehow carried more power than any shout. "Get out!" "What?" Harry stammered. "I said get out of our studio, now." Harry looked around desperately, as if searching for someone to come to his aid. "You can't throw me out. I have security. I have people." "Yeah, well, so do we," Lara replied, nodding toward the security guards who were now approaching the set. "Gentlemen, please escort our guest out of the building." Harry's panic was visible now. The reality of what was happening, of being physically removed from a television studio on live television, was starting to sink in. Wait, you can't do this. Think about the diplomatic implications. Think about your careers. I am thinking about my career, Lara said firmly. And protecting the dignity of this show and our viewers is exactly what I was hired to do. The security guards had reached the set now, professional but firm. Sir, we need you to come with us, one of them said politely. Harry spun around to face them, his voice rising to a near hysteria. Do you know who I am? I am a prince. You cannot lay hands on me. Sir, the guard repeated patiently. We're not going to lay hands on you. We're asking you to leave voluntarily. But you do need to leave. Harry looked back at Lara, desperation creeping into his voice. This is insane. You're making a huge mistake. When the ratings come in, when your bosses see what you've done, you'll regret this. Lara stood perfectly still, unmoved by his threats. The only thing I regret is that our viewers had to witness someone they might have once respected reveal himself to be such a small, petty person. That final insult broke something inside Harry. His face went purple with rage, and for a moment, it looked like he might actually try to physically confront Lara. The security guard stepped closer, ready to intervene. You think you've won something here? Harry shouted, spittle flying from his mouth. You think this makes you some kind of hero? You're nothing. You're a nobody who will be forgotten in 5 years while I will always be royal. Lara's response was quiet but devastating. Maybe, but I'll sleep well tonight knowing I stood up for decent people against a bully. Can you say the same? Harry opened his mouth to respond, but no words came out. The security guards gently but firmly began escorting him toward the exit. He struggled briefly, then seemed to realize how pathetic he looked and allowed himself to be led away. As he reached the edge of the set, he turned back one final time. This isn't over, he shouted. You have no idea what you've done. Lara watched him go, then turned back to the camera with the same professional composure she'd maintained throughout the entire ordeal. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we'll be speaking with Dr. Sarah Martinez about her incredible work with veterans suffering from PTSD, a real conversation about mental health with someone who actually respects the people she serves. As they cut to commercial, the studio erupted in applause. The crew, the producers, even the security guards were clapping. Lara had done something extraordinary. She had stood up to entitled arrogance and defended the dignity of working Americans everywhere. The prince was gone, escorted out in shame, his reputation in tatters. And Lara Spencer had reminded everyone why she was one of America's most trusted voices. Sometimes, standing up to bullies means more than any royal title ever could.